just looking at the next part of it, part 2. So we're going into the protect part. As per last time, my name is Chris Haigh. I am the Chief Information Security Officer at Mercury, and I look after our customers' security solutions. Now, Mercury are based on the Gold Coast, but we have offices all over Australia, and we specialize in IT managed services specifically. So that entire breadth of it, whether it's consulting, cloud services, cybersecurity, migration to Microsoft 365, etc. Now, we want to look at why are we actually looking at the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and why is cybersecurity becoming such a major issue within Australia and worldwide. And the key problem that we've got is essentially the breaches that are taking place are becoming more profound, much larger, and having a greater impact. I mean, you can see from the slide, it's absolutely insane. The amount of breaches that actually take place, it's happening all the time. So our guys and girls trying to actually manage this have quite a task on their hands, because the security vendor landscape is incredibly complex. So, you know, this slide is actually a bit old. There's a few brands I know of that are not even on that slide. So there's a lot to actually deal with. So the best way to actually deal with this is to actually keep it simple. And the very, very simple way of dealing with this is with a framework. Now, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework is well understood, and one of its main tenets was to make sure that it was easily understood and written in plain English. So you'll see this framework is actually set up with 5 functions. So we've got identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And then there's a number of categories under each of those. So, and that's what we'll go into each week. So last week we looked at identify, where we'll see some of the main categories there was asset management and risk kind of assessment. Now we'll move into protect. From within those categories, there are also subcategories. So there's about 108 total subcategories. Obviously, we don't have time to go into all of them within 30 minutes. So what we'll do is I'll give you a high-level overview of that particular function. So we'll go into, like I said today, the protect, access control, awareness and training, data security, etc. And then I'm going to pick one to go and have a chat about a little bit more. So today we're actually going to be joined by JJ from KnowBe4, so we can actually have a chat about awareness and training a bit more. So let's get into it. So under the protect function, there are a number of categories. So we've got access control, awareness and training, data security, information protection, processes and procedures, maintenance, and protective technology. Let's pop into each of those and just have a quick look at it. Now, like I said, we don't have a lot of time to go deep dive into this. If you do need to know any more information, you can contact us after the presentation. Now, in this particular section of identity management, we're talking about credentials for typically your users. It can be other things as well, but let's focus on the users for a second. It's very important to protect that identity. If that identity is stolen, then essentially you're going to have someone accessing your private information or data within your organization that's not the intended recipient. So we've got to protect that identity. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to manage there. So number one, there's things like password management and how we're dealing with that, right? And number two is looking at switching on something like MFA. If you have services that are public facing, and a lot are these days because we've got a lot of SaaS applications and so forth, right? You really do need to look at switching on what they call a two-factor authentication or a multi-factor authentication. There's essentially the same thing. But just to explain a little bit, if I put my username and password in, right, once I hit enter on that, it's actually going to send me a code to my phone or an authentication request, which I can then accept. You can see on that image there where they've put in their credentials into the system, and then it's pushing it to the phone, and I'm either hitting yes, this is me, or no, it's not. Now, this can almost completely eliminate a phishing attack, almost. but it's a great thing to switch on, because let's say a hacker actually managed to grab your username and password. Let's say it's for LinkedIn. So they put the details in for LinkedIn because they've got your details, and they hit login. What's actually going to happen if you've got MFA turned on is the prompt will come to your phone. You're going to look at it and go, hold on a second, I'm not logging on. So you're going to deny that request. Of course, then the hacker can't get in. So there's that extra piece of protection. So it's a good one to look at. Definitely get MFA switched on into your devices. Next one is awareness and training. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but because we're going to speak about it with JJ. But basically, what we're looking at here is, your users are essentially targeted all the time. You're looking at upwards of 90% of all successful attacks are because someone has been manipulated and giving some sort of information away. So we really do need to focus on how do we actually train our users so they're educated and not to do that or less. Looking at data security, this one, there's a lot around data security, but I'll just stick to some of the basics that you should be thinking about, right? Think about where your data is and how you are actually protecting it. So examples here could be simple things. Let's take a mobile phone, right? So does your mobile phone have auto lock on it, and for how long? Like if you've got auto lock coming on in 15 minutes, it's not really helping you too much. So look at the length of time before the auto lock comes on, and does it actually have a PIN passcode to get into the phone? Because it really, really should. You could also enroll these devices, especially if they're managed by the company, into something like Microsoft's Intune or some sort of mobile device management platform. That allows you to actually wipe the data on that phone if that phone gets lost. Things like laptops, though, again, most of us will be running something like Windows 10. And if you are, there's a product in there called BitBlocker. Now, that actually encrypts the disk, and it's free, and it should really be switched on. So definitely go have a chat to your security department or your IT team about making sure that all data on the laptops are encrypted. So if it ever does get lost, that data is not getting into the wrong hands, right? Now, information protection processes and procedures. Some of the big ones here I want to mention is the life cycle of an asset. So when we talk about an asset, it could be most things, but let's take a laptop as an example. So when that laptop gets to its end of life, what actually happens to it? All right. So all too often you'll be driving past a business and there's a skip outside and you just see old computers like piled in there. Right? It kind of makes me wonder, okay, have they taken the time to actually remove the disks and the memory and have those destroyed properly? Because you really, really do. You can't be just throwing stuff like that away, because people will get their hands on it and will be able to pull data from it. So it needs to be securely destroyed. There's lots of businesses that will do that, like Shredx, etc., that you can contact, and they will provide you with a certificate of destruction. Now, this is absolutely critical because it shows your customers as a business, you protecting that information, and it's important. The other one I'd make a note of is your change control processes, also very important. This is normally around where you could have an error, like I make a firewall change or somebody makes a firewall change and it's not checked. Change control processes can eliminate some of those issues. Maintenance. It's a good one. Not too much to say here, but certainly make sure you are not waiting until something breaks before you fix it. So you can see by that awesome pic that we got there with the wires. Yes, so some maintenance is required there. Something goes wrong in that room, you're going to have a problem tracking down where the problem is. Right, protective technology, a couple of things here. When we start talking about how networks protected and logs, what we're looking at here is predominantly starting with like your firewall technology, intrusion prevention systems, and so forth. A lot of the time, these are kind of bundled into a single device now, or it's a number of devices that are spread across the network. Make sure you are running the latest technology. Having something like a simple firewall that's not a kind of unified threat management system is probably not the best option for you. You should really be looking at upgrading and making sure that you've integrated kind of advanced malware detection technologies into that firewall and intrusion prevention systems as well. As for audits and logs, this is a difficult one, but systems do log, and it would be a good idea that you central logging that, and those logs are reviewed. Now, there are systems that can actually do some of that review for you. So using stuff like machine learning, I'm not going to say artificial intelligence, more machine learning, and it's looking for patterns and going, hey, hold on a second, that doesn't quite look right. And then it can set up the alert for you to go and have a look at it or investigate a bit more. Now, we move on to just talking about why we should be looking at protecting our business. And I mentioned earlier that it's upwards of 90% of successful data breaches start with a phishing attack or spear phishing attack. So very, very targeted to someone in an organization that's got access to that sort of information. Now, we can also see that 30% of data breaches are caused by repeat offenders. So we've got to look at training. So, and this is where we start to get on to looking at companies like KnowBe4 that can actually show and train our users. Just some extra stats there. As you can see, the numbers are quite shocking. Now, like I said, we're going to introduce JJ from KnowBe4. KnowBe4 is one of the world's largest integrated security awareness and training platforms. You can see from the Gartner Magic Quadrant that they are right at the top in the leaders. So without further ado, I'll say hello to JJ. Hey, how are you going?
Chris, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. So, right. Just want to ask you a couple of questions here because sometimes it can be difficult to integrate training into a platform. So I just wanted to look at why, recently there's been a lot of focus on the kind of human element of the cybersecurity, like I mentioned. So just having a look at that. Also, JJ, I think your mic might be higher up on your head there.
Oh, there we go.
Thanks.
Hey.
Yeah. So what's with all the focus?
Well, if we just look at the evidence at the moment, all the media, it's all around about the breaches and the big organizations that are being attacked, unfortunately. And as you mentioned, we're looking at a 90% and above successful data breaches as a result of a human. I think the most important part is it's an unintentional engagement that the human does with a malicious email. We do have the insider threats that those in the security world are aware of. So there are some people who intentionally do this, but the majority, I would say even like 98%, would actually be unintentionally doing something that either enables a cyber criminal into the computer system to run havoc, or they're releasing and downloading ransomware unintentionally, handing over the keys to the kingdom with their login details. Humans, unfortunately, because we're humans, cyber criminals just use us as an opportunity to manipulate and get into systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Not ideal. And it's interesting because I speak to people about this all the time, as I'm sure you do. And I often hear where people go like, yeah, but I mean, those scams are pretty easy to pick up in your email. Like, I'm pretty intelligent, so I'm gonna. But having said that, then I've seen a lot of intelligent people fall for this stuff. So, what's up with that?
Well, I think it again comes down to how our brains work. I'm not going to go into all the nitty gritty, but I can certainly say that if you consider how we respond to things, so we're humans, and if someone broke into our house, we would rush, an adrenaline rush would occur, and that fight or flight or freeze would take place, and we would take action. A very similar thing happens when we look at these emails. So if you think about how many emails you're getting a day, what you have to do, there's even a clean your inbox thing, #0inbox.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy because if you do that, you're going to not think at all. And there are so many red flags in an email. I don't have time to go through them all. And I have very well come close to clicking on things I shouldn't because I'm just not paying attention. And
Yeah.
my cat, you probably see my cat Fergus, who's just popped into the side of the camera. They're like a magnet. As soon as the camera's on and they hear me talk, that's it, they're here. So, because we're human, the cyber criminals want us to click something, open something, launch something, even just replying or plug in that USB. So they're focused on our human frailties. That's the sad part. COVID's a great example. You look at all of the phishing emails, the cyber criminals pivoted faster than anybody. with taking advantage of us as humans. The fear factor of toilet paper would have made people click. I know it sounds crazy, but intelligent
Yeah.
people are buying and stocking up toilet paper. So, that's why there's no discrimination against your understanding of cyber. It's just
Yeah.
worse if you have no awareness of it at all.
Absolutely. Agreed. I mean, looking at actually setting up a training program, I mean, getting a training program launched into an organization is notoriously difficult.
It is.
Whether it's with stakeholders, users, whatever it is, it like how would you go about actually planning that sort of education and awareness program?
Yep. Well, luckily for you, I've done it before I joined KnowBe4, and it's the reason I joined KnowBe4. I was tasked with exactly doing that. So train the people on cyber. And I thought, okay. So I went through the process and treated it very much like a project. So I thought, what do I need to do? I need to find out the intent. Why are we even doing this?
Mm,
How do I know it's going to be successful? Who needs to be a part of this? Are there any compliance and regulatory things and elements that I need to include? Get sign off from the top. That was critical. If you don't
mm,
have sign off and understanding of why you're doing this and the importance of it, then you really will fall in a heap. And that's the main reason that these kind of programs aren't successful. And then I looked
yeah.
for a platform and I went through the research process in depth. So for a good 6 weeks, I researched. And I had a look at, well, what do we need and what's out there that can meet those needs? And then I made sure everybody knew that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. It's not IT's responsibility
Mm,
anymore. And if you're a large organization and have a risk business unit, it's not their responsibility either. We all
mm,
have a part to play. Just last week, the cybersecurity strategy was released, and they made it very clear in that this is not government's responsibility, not businesses, not industry, it's everyone. So we've got
mm,
that part to play. So if you can do that and plan it like a project and then transition it to BAU, as they say,
yeah.
that's the way to go. Get someone in change management, organizational management, engage HR or people and culture, whatever you call it these days. Get
Mm.
everyone involved, and that's how you will be successful. Plan really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned like getting buy-in from the top.
Yeah.
Uh, that can be quite tough though. I mean, how do you go about doing that?
Look, it's actually not as hard as people think. It comes down to the what's in it for me. So we all function that way, and I challenge anyone to say we don't. It's all about, well, what's in it for me? Why should I eat better? Why should I exercise? Until you actually understand what's in it for me,
Mm,
no one's going to really care. So the best advice I can give is look at all the business units you have and say, what data have they got? What's important to them? So again, back to the HR people and environment, people and culture world,
mm,
they hold data on every employee in an organization, a lot of
okay.
it. So just
Hmm.
think for a moment, the people who are watching, what information did you give when you applied for the job you're at? Everything,
I was going to say it's everything.
everything. And I tell you what, you see the aha moment and you see people squirming, whether it be via Zoom or in their chairs, when they realize if someone gets into the system, they get my data. All of a sudden, they'll pay attention. So, that's for the end users are very much so. But if sales understand what critical information could be taken, if marketing understand what these people do in posing as them online or trying to take away their market share using cyber attacks,
Mm,
once people get it, the penny drops. It's a lot easier then to say, this is why you need to do this training. This is why it's important. And it's ongoing. Like WHS, really. That's one of
mm.
my big things. We know how to pick up a box. We really know how to look for a suspicious email.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Talking about just tailoring your conversation, I suppose, to each group. I quite like that. Like talking about to HR versus
Yeah.
talking to an end user and what it actually means for them. That's awesome. That's great advice.
You don't want to say to
Cool.
someone, your data is critical. We all know that. But if you say
Yeah.
this data and actually name it and show it. And one more thing that works really well is you can find out what data is worth on the dark web quite legally. You can find that out. And then
Mm,
if you actually put a price on it, It's a totally different conversation again.
I'm sure, especially when you're talking to finance.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So what sort of key learnings from a successful cybersecurity education and awareness program are we looking at?
Look, planning. Everything comes down to planning, no matter really what you're trying to achieve. You must plan. You must get buy-in from the top. Research. Really have a look at what's out there. Look at case studies. You want a complete program. This is gone are the days of that PowerPoint presentation once a year. This is
Yeah.
ongoing. Cyber is changing daily, so we've got to keep up with it all the time. Think about the road rules, and even though we know how to drive, we know how to be safe, there's still education that comes out about that all the time. There's still people that get fined. They still break the law. They forget, I shouldn't have been on my phone, because we're human. Cyber's very similar. Find those analogies that people have that, oh yeah, okay, moment. Then it makes the difference. And don't punish someone who does the wrong thing. It's a teachable moment. You probably want an IT people, if you're watching. I know you'll be thinking, yeah, but it's always the people. You know, that problem, that person between the keyboard and the chair. We won't talk about that. It's actually not that. This is far reaching into the minds of people that cyber criminals use to their advantage. So make sure people know how to report stuff. Don't just say
Okay.
report it to IT. Actually tell them, click on this button, because KnowBe4 has a fish alert button. If in doubt, just pab it out, click it.
Mm.
Get someone else to look at it. They'll come back to you and say, nope, that's safe, or well done. And simulations are important. That's a reason that I went for the KnowBe4 platform back then, was because I wanted to provide people with an opportunity to test the learning. Because then you can teach someone anything. You can teach someone how to drive a car from a manual, from watching videos, from everything else. Put them in a simulator, yeah, put them in the car, totally different. So
Yeah.
again, find the analogy, use gamification, get some cyber champions in your workplace. 1 to 10 ratio is really good. So for every 10 people, one of those people knows more about cyber. Give
Yeah.
them a badge. People are, again, make it fun. I was talking before, I was playing with my yo-yo. Get them a yo-yo. Get something that gives them that reason to have a bit of fun. And if you want to take it seriously to the next level in your organization, add it into your company KPIs. That works. Because then the company's saying, we take this seriously, we expect you to. So it's a whole different conversation.
Wow. That's great advice. I haven't actually heard that one before. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we're almost out of time. Thanks so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us. Absolute great insights there. So thank you. Thanks again.
My pleasure.
Cool. So what we're going to do is I just want to pop up the final slides here, just to remind everyone that next week we have our part 3, and we'll move into the detect phase. And we will see you next week. Thanks very much again for attending. Like I said before, here's some contact details. You can reach me directly on cybersecurity@mercuryit.com.au if you want to have a more in-depth discussion on anything that we've spoken about, whether it's the KnowBe4 platform and you want to see that a bit more, you need a demo or anything like that, please reach out and I will get back to you. Thanks again, everyone. Cheers.
Bye.